understand it, is their problem with you competing?
I'm legally and medically female.
No, you're just legally female. Medically, you're still male. You still have all the attributes, other than maybe genitalia, of a male. See, medical doesn't just mean reducing your testosterone levels and getting rid of Mr. Winky. There's other medically, biologically differences between men and women. So you may be legally female, you're not medically female.
But the people who oppose my existence...
Nobody is opposing your existence. That's a over-exaggeration on your part. What we're opposing is the unfair advantage that you have as a medical, biological man in a woman's sport. That's what we're objecting to.
Still want to think of me as male. They use the language of that I'm a man. And so there's this stereotype that men are always stronger than women.
No, we don't always think men are stronger than women. We're just going by the general population, or the average man and woman. See, this woman would definitely be stronger than this man.
And so if you think of trans women as men, then you think there's an unfair advantage.
That's because men do have an advantage. The average male has a distinct advantage over the average female. If you go out into the general population, men are generally stronger than women. This is not debatable. This is not something that is open for discussion. Just because you claim it doesn't make it true. It is a proven biological fact that the average male is stronger, faster than the average female. As a doctor, you would think you would know this, but allow me to give you some documentation, if you will. As you can see, men have more muscle mass. They are stronger. They have type 2 fast twitch fibers in their muscles. Women just simply are at a disadvantage when it comes to sheer strength. It's even more pronounced in athletes. The differences between men and women go beyond just muscle or testosterone or strength. All right, there's also other factors in being an athlete, such as your cardiovascular system. All right, men's lungs are about 30% larger than female lungs. Men can take in more oxygen than women can. Oxygen fuels the cells in your body. Men have a higher red blood cell count. Red blood cells carry oxygen to those cells and carry CO2 away from the cells. This gives men a distinct advantage in events that require a lot of cardio. There are other factors to consider when you're talking about men and women in athletics or sports. Men are generally taller. So in events like cycling, running, these would become distinct advantages. Men and women have actually different angles in the quadricep muscle. This is called the Q angle. And then there's ligaments in the body. When women enter puberty, they become more elastic, especially in transgenders that have gone through puberty. Men are less prone to sports injuries, which means you can push your body harder. All these are prevalent in discussion when you're talking about transgenders being in sports, especially when it's male to female. You said you were legally and medically female. You're a doctor. You know that you're being dishonest. You know you are not medically female. There are too many differences between the male body and the female body for you to sit here and claim that you're medically female.
Sport as a human right, just explain what that means for you.
We care about the Olympics. We care about our favorite football club. We care about the Rugby World Cup. We care about sport. It is central to society.
Yeah, caring about something and even being an athlete doesn't give you a right to it. If it did, you could literally walk on to any field at any time, at any event, and simply play. That's what having a right is. You have a right to do it, but you don't. You can't say that you have a right to compete in women's sports when you're a man. You don't have a right to play in the NBA. You don't have a right to play on the American Olympic team for the NBA. You don't have a right to any of that. Playing a sport is not a right. It is a privilege at best, but it's not a right.
So if you want to say, well, I believe you're a woman, for all of society.
That's the whole point. I don't want to say you're a woman for all the rest of society. You're not a woman. For all those reasons that I just listed, that your body as a male is different from a female, that is why you're never going to be a woman. You're a man. You're a biological male. We don't say that. You say that. Progressive liberals say that. You're not a woman. You'll never be a woman at any given time. Contrary to popular belief, men that trans to women aren't real women. You're not women at all. You're biologically men who identify as women. That's it. That's as far as it goes.
Accept this massive central part that is sport, then that's not fair.
You mean how it's fair with all the biological differences and advantages that you have? Like that's fair? No. Keeping you out and letting only biological women compete, that's fair. Allowing a man, such as you, into a woman's sport is not fair. It is the opposite of fair.
So fairness is the inclusion of trans women.
Yeah, you saying it doesn't make it true.
Do you think you'd have been a world champion cyclist if you hadn't transitioned?
I don't think I am a world champion because I'm a trans woman.
That's not to say that you couldn't be a world champion as a male, but I've seen your record and seen the men's record. Had you gone up against men, you would have got your ass kicked. So yeah, you being a trans woman is exactly why you're a champion, because you competed against women, not men.
I put in the work, and Again, we have to remember, I lose most of my races.
So you lose some of your matches, yet somehow you seem to set a record during qualifying. Sounds like to me you throwing some shit on purpose, homeboy.
I've lost against the specific cis women complaining about me being unfair.
The men's 100-metre record is 9.58 seconds. The women's is 10.49 seconds. There is an undisputable advantage for men in sport.
Her saying it is true.
We talk about men being faster than women. We have to be very careful what we're talking about.
No, we don't have to watch what we're talking about. You take the average man, and he'll be faster than the average woman. You take the top male athlete, and he'll be faster than the top female athlete. Men are faster than women. Now, there are obviously going to be some outliers where one woman is going to be faster than some of the men. Some of the men. But even the fastest woman will not outrun Usain Bolt. It's just not going to happen, dude. Just stop lying.
So, the example you gave was at the
In
most...
speed and strength sports, they have a 10% to 12% advantage in most scientific opinions.
Again, when she says it, it's true.
At the elite level, right? So when we look at the very best athletes in men and women, you see this roughly 10 to 12% gap. But if we're talking about like the average man, no, that's
but when
not
we're
true.
talking about the IOC, we're talking about the elite level, aren't we?
Of course.
You just admitted that men have an advantage when it's elite athletes. You were trying to get around to alluding to the average man and the average woman. There's a gap, all right? And again, like I said, the gap grows when you get to the more upper echelons of athletes. When she pointed out that the cycling was amongst the elite females, you said, of course.
If you look within a single sex event,
Well, that's what we're talking about. A single athletic event regarding one sex. In this case, women's cycling.
the difference between first and eighth is very large. And the difference between first and first between sexes is often smaller than the difference between first and eighth within a sex.
What you're saying, that between first place male and eighth place male, there's a huge gap. But between the first place male and the first place female, the gap narrows. But there is still a gap. And it is a pretty noticeable gap. Here are some examples of men in women's sports. You're claiming that the gap between first and first is smaller, but not always. Here is a transgender biological male to female who was born Craig, who then transitioned to Cece. When Craig competed as a man, he wasn't even in the top 200 male athletes in track and field. Not even in the top 200. Yet he was able to win in the female division. He was able to win a national championship for Division II and was only 2 seconds away from breaking the NCAA women's record. And he wasn't even in the top 200 male athletes. So had he been, say, ranked 10th in NCAA men's Division II, what do you think he would have done to that record? He would have obliterated it. It wouldn't even be touchable by another biological woman. So for you to sit here and say, well, the gap is narrower, it may be in some sports. In some sports, others, it wouldn't be. You have to be fair across the board. You can't say, well, transgenders can compete in cycling, but not track and field. You can't say, well, transgender women can play in the WNBA, but not soccer or football, as you called it. The top male athletes will always outperform the top female athletes. I don't care how much of a gap it is still a gap that the women have to overcome. Here, a male powerlifter set 3 women's records in a single day. Basically, he done what no female has done up until this point. But now he has 3 female records, and he did it all in a single day. Here is a sport where bone density and muscle density would play a major factor in who would be number one. For a male to female transgender, he would have thicker bones, so arm bars, any submission holds that are made for joints would be much more difficult to get him to tap out. Muscle density would be the same effect. It would be harder for a woman to apply enough pressure, or she would have to apply more pressure to him than she would another female to get the same results of a tap out. How is that fair? How is that fair? His bone density and his muscular density play a major role in submission moves. When it comes to ground and pound, his bone density and muscle density and the fact that he was just physically stronger allowed him to break his opponent's skull. He fractured her orbital bone and gave her a concussion. Now, a concussion can happen by another female, but it was much easier for him because he is still a him in all those other areas: bone density, muscle density, strength, speed. All those makes him a more competitive fighter than a woman. So no, it is not fair because he's not a woman.
So by that logic, would you not have male or female categories whatsoever?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a different question. So I think it's not fair to trans people to say, well, in order to fix whether to include you in sport, let's just radically shift how we do sport. The IOC has no appetite for that at the moment. They are fully committed to only 2 sex categories of sport.
This study by the Swedish university, the Karolinska Institute, which I know you've read closely, it does say that there's very limited change in thigh strength 12 months after transitioning and taking testosterone suppressants. Thigh strength, as you know more than anyone else, obviously a huge thing, particularly in sport, but particularly in track cycling. Do you accept that there may still be an advantage?
For a doctor who's about to say something really stupid, you're about to say, it's possible. No, it's a given fact. You have an advantage over women. Your body is not a woman's body, you flipping moron.
Is it possible? Yes. However, the range of body sizes and strength levels within a sport, you can be successful with massively different body compositions, even within my sport.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. Boy, you really cracked that one, didn't you? Of course, there can be different body types that excel at the same sport. What makes it almost virtually impossible is you're not the same sex. You're not the same body type. You're not. You're not. You have advantages that they do not. When they compete amongst each other, they're equals. When they compete against you, it's not equal because your body isn't like theirs. So even though they have different body types, like shorter, a little heavier set on this one, a little thinner on this one, a little more muscular on this one, they still have the same types of muscles, meaning they don't have the quick twitch muscles, meaning they don't have the 30% extra lung capacity, meaning they don't have the extra red blood cells, meaning they don't have a longer lower torso. Their longer length generally comes in the upper torso. See, those are all female traits. And as a doctor, you should know this. But jinkies, Scooby, common sense goes a long way, and you and progressive liberals don't seem to fucking have any.
So, again, a British example would be Victoria Pendleton. Teeny tiny skinny legs. Best in the world.
If Chris Hoy was to transition at a master's level, if he was to take testosterone suppressants for 12 months and then compete at a master's level against Victoria Pendleton, he would beat Victoria Pendleton.
Would he?
She would beat Victoria Pendleton.
Would Chris? We don't actually know that. Again, we are making this massive assumption.
We're not making a massive assumption. I've literally just given you time and time and time and time again of transgender male to female athletes who have come into women's sports and absolutely dominated. I've even given you reasons why they dominate. Your body is most certainly different, and testosterone suppressants do not change those other physical attributes. There's a lot of things that humans don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt, but we accept it as fact. This is one of those things.
But
I think that's a fair assumption to make. Don't you?
No, we haven't seen this in the rest of sport.
Yes, we have seen it in the rest of sports. Were you not paying attention earlier?
So again, trans women have been allowed to openly compete since 2004, since the 2004 Olympics. Since the 2016 Olympics, you didn't require genital surgery, and we didn't see a single trans person. So it was already the case that an unscrupulous country could have taken someone like Chris Hoy and met the testosterone policy, gave him a passport for female, and said, off you go to Rio. Didn't happen. So we've already had 2 Olympic cycles where this could have happened, and it didn't. So when you ask me, well, here's this potential case, what should we do now with real people based on this potential fantasy case? That is not how human rights work.
Again, pay attention. Competing in sports, especially in the Olympics, is not a right. Never is. Never has been. It isn't for you. It isn't for anybody else. Just because you're transgender doesn't mean you get special rights.
Is this bigger than sport? Is it more important that trans women feel that they're included than to maintain a category within sport?
I think you're asking me, is like trans women inclusion more important than fairness in sport? But again, my point is that trans inclusion is fairness. It is unfair to exclude legal and medical women.
You're legally female simply because of political correctness in the government. You're not medically female simply because of all the things that I've listed that are different in your body than hers. You're not medically female in any shape, form, or fashion other than you may have a vagina now. Maybe. If you had the surgery. Everything else doesn't matter. You're still biologically male. You're not a woman. You have quick twitch muscle fibers. You have a longer lower torso. You're stronger. You have more lung capacity. You have more red blood cells to carry fresh oxygen to your leg muscles. Yeah, you have a distinct advantage over a biological woman because you're not a woman. Your body is not a woman's body.
Trans women from women's sport or part of society. So this is much bigger than sport in that it's the proxy for all of trans inclusion in society. Talk of bathrooms has shifted into sport by people who don't care about sport. So I think it's clear that this issue is bigger than sport.